There are days when doing anything at all, much less climbing a mountain, seemed like the very worst of ideas. When staying in bed, or at least doing as little as possible, seemed like the very best. This was certainly one of those days. Yet I was miles from home. I would not be back here for, well, possibly ever. So I got up, dragged myself to the bus stop, plonked myself down into a seat on a bus, stared out of the window absent-mindedly as beautiful Lake District views passed me by, and before any of it I was at Ravenstone Hotel. I might not be feeling like it, but I was going for a walk. I found my path and followed it away from the hotel and the road it stood beside, steep and wooded. The path did not provide the most welcome of greetings. It did not take me long to come to a full stop, breathless and sore. I took a moment, then pushed on, and soon found myself stopped again. Less than 20 minutes in, and my mind was already starting to whisper, "Turn around. You can't do it." I kept on. Once I got above the tree line, I thought the view would save me. It was beautiful. The distant Derwentwater, closer Bassenthwaite Lake, flanked with hills rising up to the horizon, made for an arresting view. Or it would have, if I had not already stopped to take yet another breather. It did give me a boost, offering a crutch to my fading morale. The problem now was that I could see the hill I was climbing, rising up above me. Ulloch Pike is short, as mountains go, but is a mountain still. It seemed quite monstrous in my present condition. I stopped as I joined the main path that leads to its summit. It was far too early for lunch, but I tucked into mine all the same. I sat with my back to the mountain. Behind me Ulloch Pike stood, with the taller alongside behind that. To my right I could see Skiddaw, a great black block, one of the tallest lumps of rock in all of England and the highest of my summits planned for the day. It should have been the fourth of 6. Given that I was already flagging around halfway up the first, it seemed possible that I had been a little optimistic when I drew up the plan. This wasn't the most demoralised I'd been on the mountain. That had happened the day before, and was part of the reason why I was suffering so much today. I wanted to get out. To leave, to go home, or back to the bed and breakfast at least. Thoughts of sitting in a nice cafe with a book and a large hot chocolate drifted through my mind. It is at times like this that I have to ask myself, why do I do this? I like walking, the simple joy of being in motion. I like exploring, finding and seeing things that are new to me. I like being in the UK's countryside. It is green and welcoming. I like being outdoors. Even in the city, the roominess and possibilities are enticing. I like the challenge of it. Big hills always call to me, as if they want to be climbed. I like the views. They offer perspectives that you just can't get elsewhere. I like the simplicity, to have no other aim in a day but to walk. None of those are the reason I stood up, though. I did not turn around and start to climb the mountain again for kinesthetic joy, or exploration, or because the mountains called to me. No, the only reason I kept going through the tiredness and the aching legs is pure, unadulterated stubbornness. I said I would, so I did. The rewards were twofold. The views only grew with height. Ulloch Pike, Longside, and the ridge that runs between them are beautiful. And so too was Carlside, my third summit of the day, despite my guilt at adding more footprints to its path that is more a scar cut by 1,000 boots than an actual surface for walking on. Rewards, however, can be what you deserve, rather than what you want. I stopped regularly to catch my breath, and my legs continued to complain. When I arrived at the summit of Carlside, I sat down for a long time, and contemplated Skiddaw. Its gigantic black-grey bulk was intimidating. I could make out a path towards its summit, a grey line heading up its flank. From here, it didn't actually look possible. How could I climb something so steep? I stayed on Carlside a while, contemplating the question. I could, after all, turn down the hill and take one of the escapes I had planned for. I even had to ask that scary question, is it safe? After some thought, I decided that it was. That question was driven on by legs that were sore and tired, but had plenty of strength left to give. I was demoralised, but I still had the focus to stay safe. I had researched the route well enough to know it stood well below my absolute skill level. I knew all too well that things can be scary from afar, only to be far more welcome when greeted intimately. Happy with my answer, I set off again and soon found that I had indeed been right. The path to the summit of Skiddaw was steep. Breathing hard, gulping down every bit of air my lungs could grasp, air that incidentally was getting a bit boisterous. As you get higher, the wind gets stronger, generally speaking, and Skiddaw is about as high as things get in England. Between the buffeting of the wind, the pain in my legs, and the heaving of my chest, I had had enough. But, as I said before, I am stubborn. 10 steps, I told myself. 10 steps and you can stop again. I started walking and 30 or so steps later, I stopped to catch my breath. 10 more steps. This time I managed a little less until I had to stop. 10 more steps. Less managed again. 10 more steps. Less again. In fact, only the 10 I had promised myself, and that felt hard enough work. Deep breath. 10 more steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and on. I had done it. I'd passed the steepest part. I stopped somewhere in the 30s. 10 more steps. This time I managed 50 or so. 10 more steps. This time I stopped counting and just kept walking. Soon I met a gentle ridge and the tourist path that follows it to Skiddaw's summit. This was the point where I fell in love with Skiddaw. It is made of black grey rocks that were, 500 or so million years ago, a seabed. This gives it an otherworldly feel, but unlike other mountains I have known with this feeling, these stones aren't loose or trying to trip you, nor are they sharp or jagged. It's a more welcoming otherness than an overwhelming one, a joy of being somewhere different, of being somewhere new. It was an easy walk to the summit, although the wind was strong enough that my feet ended up a little to the right of where I had intended them to go. Good thing Skiddaw is broad and stable, or else this might have caused me some concern. The summit itself was delightful. A small wind shelter protected me from the wind and its chill, although I could not help but stick my head up and enjoy the views. Nothing close to Skiddaw has as much height, so you can see for miles. There was a touch of mist in the air that meant seeing the seaside was out of the question, but I could see plenty of the Lake District, which is pretty enough for me. I had just finished eating some food and was thinking to try and identify some of the features I was looking at when I noticed some people making their way to the summit. The wind shelter I was in would not shelter us all, and with the wind being as aggressive as it was, I didn't want to prevent them from taking shelter themselves, or hang around getting buffeted myself. So I set off downhill, wishing I could have stayed a little longer. I walked down by the easier tourist path, although I had enough stubborn left in me to detour for a visit to Skiddaw's subsidiary summits of Lesser and Lower Man. Both had interesting metalwork in their summit cairns and provided lovely views. Both were an exercise in self-harm, according to my now loudly protesting legs. Yet my struggles to find motivation had gone. My time on Skiddaw had been wonderful. Perhaps the struggles to get there had only magnified the wonder of the summit. Why do I walk? Because in the end, I love every minute of it.